Students, I'm back again with another topic, Bhakti Movement. And this topic is especially for the students of Punjab History and Culture, semester 3. So, what are we going to do in this? I will be talking about the origin and the salient features of the Bhakti movement along with its impact. Right, so let's talk about the Bhakti movement. Normally, the university questions range from about discuss the origin or the features of the Bhakti movement, what was the importance of the Bhakti movement. They may also ask you about the Bhakti reformers, which unfortunately I haven't dealt in my video this time, but definitely I will next video when I will be making. So let's start with this one right now. Salvation, which means the freedom from the cycle of death and birth, according to Hindu thought, can be attained by three different. Just hold on, if I could have my tools. Yes. Okay. Can be attained by three different method or the marg, as they say. One is the gyan marg, that is through knowledge. The other is the action or through the karam, and the third one is the devotion or through the bhakti. Now, this bhakti movement is all about devotion, all about the devotion to God rather than belief in any kind of superstitions or traditions. Now, during the medieval period, there were these series of Hindu saints and reformers. They set on the movement of the religious reform. They adopted devotion, and hence the movement came to be known as the Bhakti movement. Right? This is important. Now, in the beginning, the Bhakti cult was known as Ekantika Siddhanta. Why? Because it laid emphasis on. I'm so sorry, just kind of jumped really quick. Now, it laid emphasis on a single-minded love and devotion to one supreme being, one supreme God. The Bhakti movement was not confined to any one quarter of India, but it spread its influence on the all over India, all over the country. Now, Bhakti movement started from the south. This is important. It traveled towards the north, and in Punjab, it changed its character into Sikhism. Because whenever we talk about Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he was also one of the Bhakti saints. So, a quick revision of what we have done so far. As I told you, bache, salvation or the freedom from the cycle of life and death can be attained by three different marg: Gyan marg, or the Karam marg, or the third one is the Bhakti marg, or which we call as the devotion. So, in during the medieval time, there were these Hindu saints and reformers who wanted to who wanted to bring about a religious reform, and they adopted devotion as the means to attain God. In the beginning, the Bhakti cult was also known as Ekantika Siddhant, which means emphasis on the single minded love and devotion to one supreme. So, Bhakti movement was not confined to one quarter of India. It did start from south, it traveled to the north, and it spread in the entire country. Now, the first part, as I told you, we'll be talking about the origin, that what were the reasons, why did Bhakti movement originate. So I have about five reasons which we will be talking about. Let me change the color of my things that it becomes little more clearer. Now, one, evil practices of the Hindus. Number two, influence of Veshmanism, fear of the spread of Islam, influence of the Sufi sect, and emergence of the great reformers. So, in history, whenever you are doing any question, if you just learn the keyword, the things are much more easier. So, in these causes, just learn the causes and read about them, and then write in your own words. So, first, evil practices of the Hindus. Number two, the influence of Veshmanism, fear of the spread of Islam, influence of the Sufi sect, and emergence of the great reformers. So, let's move on. Oops, my this cursor really goes very fast. I'm so sorry. All right, so let's start with the evil practices of the Hindus. Now, in ancient times, Hinduism enjoyed a very high place among the religions of the world, but during the medieval period, Hinduism had lost its pristine purity and grandeur, and many evils crept in. Now, empty ritual practices, customs, ceremonies had taken place of the true religion. The Brahmins, the priestly class, they had become very selfish and corrupt. Now, the degeneration of Hinduism perturbed the patrons of their religion. They preached the path of devotion or bhakti to eradicate the evils of the Hinduism and reform it. So पहला फैक्टर बच्चे आई वुड से इज द ईवल प्रैक्टिसेस इन द हिंदुइज्म. हिंदुइज्म बच्चे एक ऐसा धर्म रहा है जो शुरू से ही इट अटेन्ड अ हाई प्लेस, बट ड्यूरिंग द medieval period क्योंकि लॉट ऑफ करप्शन हैड कम इन टू दिस रिलीजन दैट इट लॉस्ट इट्स ग्रैंडियर एंड इट्स प्रिस्टीन प्योरिटी. आप देखो फजूल के जो है आपके रीति रिवाज, कस्टम्स एंड सेरेमनीज दैट हैड टेकन प्लेस ऑफ द ट्रू रिलीजन. Brahmins, priestly class, they had become very selfish and corrupt. So this actually perturbed the people, and now they preach the path of devotion or bhakti to eradicate the evils of the Hinduism. Number two part is the influence of the Veshmanism. This is number two reason for the same. Now, it was during the time of the Gupta period that it witnessed the origin of the Veshmanism. Now, Veshmanites worshipped Vishnu as its incarnations. So, after Gupta age, Veshmanism it flourished in South India, and the followers or the preachers of the Veshmanism they spread the ideas of bhakti and produced a good amount of literature in the language. So it is from actually the south that the bhakti movement started, and it spread to the north as well. Number three, the fear of the spread of Islam. Now, there is no doubt that spread of Islam directly contributed to the spread of the Bhakti movement in India. Now, Islam preached the brotherhood of mankind and opposed any kind of priesthood or caste distinction. So that way Islam attracted the low caste Hindus जिनको बच्चे अपने इस present scenario में जो है they were not allowed to be the part of the Hindu religion. So under such circumstances Bhakti movement originated to protect Hinduism from extinction. These Bhakti reformers they also preach the unity of God and the brotherhood of mankind. Then number four is the influence of the Sufi sect. So we are doing the causes of the birth of the Bhakti movement. Now, Sufism was a Muslim reform movement which was born in the early medieval age. The most prominent figures in the history of Sufism in India was Khwaja Mun-ud-Din Chishti, Baba Farid, Khwaja Qutb-ud-Din. Now, they all preach that God does not live in temples but in the mind of the human beings. The union of human soul with God was possible only through the devotion to Him. That is what the Sufi saints talked about. They also preach that only a true guru, which they called as the murshid, could help the individual to have communication or union with God. These ideas of Sufis greatly influenced the Bhakti reformers like Kabir and Guru Nanak. Don't worry, we'll do these 5 causes when we have just finished that. We'll do it really quick. Now comes the fifth and the last point for the origin of the Bhakti movement, that is the emergence of the great reformers. Now, many prominent Bhakti reformers, Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, Jayadev, Namdev, Ravidas, Kabir, Tulsidas, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, they condemned the evils in the Hindu society. They preached the path of love and devotion to God. It was solely due to their effort that Bhakti movement could become popular all over the country. So let's just quickly go to what we have done very quickly. We have done the causes of the Bhakti movement. So let's just start from here. Now, there are five causes: evil practices of the Hindus, influence of Veshmanism, fear of the spread of Islam, influence of Sufi sect, and emergence of the great reformers. So, number one is the evil practices. As I told you, बच्चे हिंदू धर्म में जो उसकी pristine purity है, grandeur है, they lost during the medieval time. तो अब यहाँ पर क्या हो गया था? Empty ritual practices, customs. So, in this time, it was these Bhakti movement which preach devotion or bhakti to eradicate the evils of Hinduism and reform it. वैश्वनिज्म का इन्फ्लुएंस है गुप्ता पीरियड के टाइम पे द ओरिजिन ऑफ वैश्वनिज्म वाज देयर एंड दे वर्शिप्ड विष्णु एंड इट्स इनकारनेशंस नाउ वैश्वनिज्म flourished in the South India also, and the preachers of Vaishnavism spread the idea of bhakti, which means to attain salvation through devotion, through reciting the hymns of the god. And of course they produced a good amount of literature in Tamil language, right? Then is the fear of the spread of Islam, because Islam as a religion, it preached brotherhood of mankind, it opposed priesthood, and at that time it was a huge attraction for the low caste Hindus. So under such circumstances, Bhakti movement originated to protect the Hindu dharma from extinction. Then influence of the Sufi saints, Khwaja Munuddin Chishti, Baba Farid, Khwaja Qutbuddin. Now they all preach that God doesn't live in temples, but it lives in the mind of the human beings. They taught about the main focus should be on the union of the human soul with the God, and that was possible only through the devotion to Him. In fact, I have another detailed video on Sufism as such, where we'll be talking about in detail about Sufism. Now, they also preach that the only true guru, that is Murshid, could help the individual to attain union with God, right? So, these ideas of Sufis also contributed to the Bhakti movement. Of course, the emergence of great reformers Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, Jaydev, Namdev, Ravidas, Surdas, Tulsidas, Kabir, Guru Nanak, they condemned the evils in the Hindu society, and it was solely due to their effort that Bhakti movement became popular all over the country. Now let's change the color of the pen again. Just hold on. Let's just come back to this color now. Now we'll talk about the salient features of the Bhakti movement. What are the features that comprised the Bhakti movement? Now first I'll just quickly jot them down all. One, belief in one God. Now these are the salient features. Then number two is Bhakti. Number three is the universal brotherhood. Number four is Atma and Paramatma, or the soul and the God. Number five are the good deeds. Now these are all the features of the Bhakti movement. Then is the role of Guru. Then is self-surrender. We have about 11 features or points in this. Quickly we'll do it. No belief in the rituals. Now this is very important. The features of the Bhakti movement. They opposed the caste system. Then is the condemned idolatry, that is idols, or जिसे हम मूर्तियां भी कहते हैं. And the last one, 11th, is no sanctity of any particular language. Now let's do these features in detail. We have already covered the causes of the Bhakti movement, and now we are moving to the features of the Bhakti movement. One, now the Bhakti reformers, they preach that there is only one God. Right? They believe that Allah, Ishvar, Vishnu, Krishna, they're all the names of one God. So the followers of the Bhakti movement believed that there is only one God, and Allah, Ishvar, Vishnu, Krishna, Ram are all the names of one God. Now, the followers of the Bhakti cult also believe that God is omnipresent. That means God is present everywhere. God is all powerful. It is not that God just resides in temples, in mosques, in gurudwaras, but God is present everywhere. God is the creator of the world. The saints of Bhakti cult, they worship God both in Nirgun and Sagun forms. The God resides in all the living beings of the world. Now, a little bit about Nirgun and Sagun forms. See, when this world was not created, we could not see God because, and that aspect is called as Nirgun. When we could not see the aspect of God, but when God created the universe, He created the world, the flowers, the human beings, the animals, He created the world. It is through His creation that we can see Him. This is His Sagun form. So God, for the Bhakti saint, they believe they worshipped God in both forms. Even when the universe was not created, God was still there. And even when the world was created, in His creation, you could see the form of the God. So God resides in all living beings of the world. Number two, the best way to obtain God is through bhakti, which involves constant absorption in the name, in the Lord of love. So, bhakti reformers laid stress on chanting the hymns or the bhajans of the Lord in utmost devotion and developed love for Him and His creation. So, very quickly, what have we done? One, believe in one God. Number two is bhakti, that is by reciting the name of the God, by chanting the hymns or the bhajans in the utmost devotion, you can attain salvation. Number three is the universal brotherhood. Now, most of these bhakti reformers, they preach universal brotherhood of mankind. That means they do not believe in any kind of distinctions based on caste, color, creed, and sect. To them, all human beings were the creations of one and the same God. Hence, they were all equal. That means they believed in the equality of the humans, right? They were primarily human beings, Hindus and Muslim afterwards. No person was high or low because of the birth. So that means the Bhakti reformers, they emphasize the fundamental unity of mankind and the doctrine of human equality. I'll try to kind of put this whole PDF in the description box. If any one of you want to refer to it as your notes, be my guest. I mean, you can always do that. Now, the fourth point is Atma and Paramatma, or the soul and the God. Now, these Bhakti reformers, they believe that there is a deep relation between the soul and God. The soul of the man is immortal. Immortal, matlab it does not die. It is a part of a bigger soul, that is Paramatma. Man pollutes the soul by his bad action, and the impure soul takes birth again and again and suffers from the worldly action. The pure soul merges with the bigger soul, that is God, and man gets salvation. See, so what they actually pointed out, that the soul is immortal. The soul does not die, but because man pollutes his soul by the bad action, and because of the bad karmas, the impure soul has to take birth again and again, and it suffers from the worldly action. But if you, by your good deeds, if your soul is pure, then it merges with the bigger soul, that is God, and it gets the salvation. Right? Then is the good deeds. Now, Bhakti reformers, they preach man should perform good deeds, speak the truth, practice purity, justice, live on the honest earnings, and shun selfishness. Number six, the role of the Guru. Now, these Bhakti reformers, they held Guru in high esteem. For attainment of God, the help of Guru or a spiritual teacher is a must. Now, Guru is the link between the man and the God and serves as a ladder to reach God. The Guru teaches utmost devotion to God, brings the man to light from darkness, and gives knowledge, shunning ignorance. Then comes the self surrender. It is the ego which keeps man away from God. And this human ego must be destroyed and everything sacrificed at the feet of the Guru. Kabir thus writes, okay, I'm so sorry. All right. Now, Kabir thus writes, when I was proud, thou were not in me. Now that thou art me, I am not proud. Matlab, when I surrender myself to the will of the God, I be the part of the God. It clearly means that self-ego is the great hindrance in the attainment of God, and when man gets his blessings, there is no ego in man. Now, no belief in rituals. Bhakti reformers, they were against the formalities of the religion, any kind of pilgrimages, any kind of fast sacrifices. They also deny the supremacy of the Brahmins in religion, superstitions, blind faith. They say that the God cannot be pleased through yagyas and sacrifices, but through simple heart and sincerity towards Him. Then is opposed the caste system. Now, Bhakti reformers raised a very strong voice against the caste system. Kabir says, Jati pati pooch na koi, har ko jo bhaje jo har ka hoy. That means those who worship God are the men of God. God is not bothered about your caste. So this is very, very important that the Bhakti reformers, they absolutely were against the caste system. In fact, Guru Nanak Dev Ji was also a Bhakti saint. He says, castes are folly, names are folly. That means it's all an illusion. There is nothing called as caste. Now, many untouchables became the followers of the Bhakti cult. The disciples of Haridas, Namdev were untouchables. The famous saint Ravidas was of low caste. Even Kabir was a weaver. Then is condemned idolatry. Now, God dwells in the heart of men and not in the ideal or in a temple. So, the Bhakti reformers were of two kinds. Now, I had explained to you earlier also Nirgun and Sagun. Now, Nirgun Bhagat believed in the formless God, whereas Sagun Bhagats believed in the incarnation of God in the shape of Ram, Krishna, and Narayan. To consider an ideal as God was condemned by both. That this ideal system jo hai, that was condemned by both. Kabir says, if God were a stone, I would worship the mountain. So this is a very important aspect of the Bhakti movement. In fact, when I tell you this, basically the Nirgun Bhagat jo hai, what they felt was that they believed in the formless God. But the Sagun Bhagats, they believed that God does exist. They believed in the incarnation of God in the shape of Ram, Krishna, and Narayan. Sorry, but both of them considered ideal worship as not an aspect of the Bhakti movement. As I said, Kabir said, if God were a stone, I would worship the mountain. Now, no sanctity of any particular religion. Now, these Brahmins had declared that Sanskrit was the language of gods, but the Bhakti reformers, they did not believe in sanctity or being any language as divine. He says that God understands only one language, and that is the language of the heart. All preachers of Bhakti movement preached in their own language. So, if I may conclude, Bhakti movement thus stood for the unity of Godhood and the brotherhood of mankind. The ritualism and the blind faith of Hinduism were condemned. Guru Nanak Dev Ji led Bhakti movement in Punjab, which continued under his 9 successors. So, we have talked about the origin of the Bhakti movement. We have talked about the features of the Bhakti movement. Now, I think in my next video, um, in fact, I think I would kind of talk about here only because little more I think I can talk about this. Let's just do the impact also. I came across a very beautiful book, the Sikh history book written for the students of Punjab history and culture by Raghunath Rai. In fact, I am very much indebted to this book for making this video and for helping you to talk about the impact of the Bhakti movement, right? So now let's talk about the impact. Now let's just talk about the broad headings. First, I'll talk about the religious effect. Then we'll talk about its social and the cultural impact. I think two are what he's going to talk about. Okay, then also about the political effects. So we will talk about the impact of the Bhakti movement in these primarily three headings: the political effect, then is the social and the cultural impact, and then we will be talking about the religious impact. Now first let's talk about the religious impact. मतलब भक्ति मूवमेंट जो है इसका प्रभाव क्या पड़ा? देखो, सबसे पहले बच्चे, it saved Hinduism. Number two, it lowered the prestige of the brahmanas. Then the places of the pilgrimage increase. So these are the 3 points, and the fourth point is setback to Buddhism. So let's just do these points. Okay, checked the propaganda of Islam and emergence of Sikhism. So these are the 6 points that we will be doing under the impact. Religious impact: saved Hinduism, lowered the prestige of the Brahmins, places of pilgrimage increase, setback to Buddhism, check the propaganda of Islam, emergence of Sikhism. So let's talk about this. See, most important impact of Bhakti movement was that it saved Hinduism from degeneration. I told you, bache, before the growth of this movement, many evils had crept into Hinduism, which made it unpopular. And of course, with the establishment of the Muslim kingdoms, Hinduism received a great setback. The low caste Hindus had started leaving Hinduism and embracing Islam. So, under such circumstances, Bhakti movement was a movement to reform the Hindu religion. It condemned the caste system, untouchability, wasteful rituals, ceremonies, and it restored Hinduism to its ancient glory. So, most important work, that Bhakti movement protected Hinduism and it again began to flourish. Number two, it did lower the importance and prestige of the Brahmins in the Hindu society. Now, the Brahmins were dominating the society. They emphasized these empty rituals, superstitions. They exploited the people. So, Bhakti reformers severely criticized these evils and hence lowered the status and the prestige of the Brahmins. Then the places of pilgrimage increase. How? Because with the spread of the Bhakti movement, many places developed into centers of pilgrimage. The people started respecting these saints and reformers like Sankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramanand, Namdev, Guru Nanak. Gradually, their followers established buildings, monasteries, shrines, temples, gurudwaras at the places of their birth and connected with other events of their life. So these places developed into the centers of pilgrimage. Now, there was one negative aspect, that it gave a further blow to Buddhism, which was already in decline in Punjab. Now, since ancient times, Buddhism and Hinduism had been propagated against each other, but in the early medieval period, Buddhism began to decline. Now, the Bhakti movement, it kind of speeded that decline and made Hinduism a very popular religion. A number of Buddhists left their religion and reverted to Hinduism. In fact, when I come to think of the Buddhism, what I was just teaching about Buddhism in Punjab, we have it in semester 1. See, the most important aspect, that was certain principles of Buddhism was not suitable to the martial class of people that these Punjabis were, right? But the details I've talked in the video which I've made for the students of semester 1. Right now, the Bhakti movement also checked the spread of Islam. Now, especially the Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he adopted many principles of Islam. Just like Islam, he stressed on the unity of God. He condemned idol worship, caste system, and they preach universal brotherhood of mankind. So people were no more inclined to embrace Islam because all those good qualities of Islam was actually propagated by the Bhakti reformers. Now is the emergence of Sikhism. This is a very, very important aspect of Bhakti movement, that it led to the birth of Sikhism. Guru Nanak Dev Ji and his successors, they preach the doctrines or the principles of the Bhakti movement, and ultimately in 1699, the Sikh religion established its separate identity and led to the birth of the Khalsa Panth. Now, you'll be talking in much more detail in your next semester. Now, let's come to the social and cultural impact. Now, a very quick revision of what we have done till now. So, we have done the religious effect, save Hinduism, lowered the prestige of the Brahmins, place of pilgrimage increase, setback to Buddhism, check the propaganda of Islam, emergence of Sikhism. Now, what were its social and cultural impact? Let's just use a different pen this time. Just hold on, then it becomes very easy to differentiate. Now, one, improvement in the social relations between the Hindus and the Muslims. It broadened people's outlook. Then is upliftment of the low classes in the society, development of the composite art, right? Now, this is it. And then you have the political, okay, there's another one, enrichment of the literature. Right, then we have the one. Okay, so we will be talking about the four important ones in the social cultural impact. First, the improvement in the relation between the Hindus and the Muslims. It broadened people's outlook, upliftment of the low classes, development of composite art, and enrichment of the literature. So let's talk about this. Now, see, as a result of the Bhakti movement, the social relation between the Hindus and the Muslims considerably improved. Now, both Kabir and Guru Nanak Dev Ji preached the tolerance between the two communities. In fact, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, after attaining enlightenment, said, "Na koi Hindu, na koi Musalman." Right, so a large number of Hindus and Muslims were their followers, so it kind of developed good relations between them. Dr. Tara Chand, an eminent historian, writes, the effort to seek new life led to development of new culture which was neither exclusively Hindu nor purely Muslim. It was indeed a Muslim Hindu culture, and I think that remained a part of Punjab. Punjab was the most important center for the Hindu Muslim culture, and for this the importance goes to the emergence of the Bhakti movement in Punjab. Then number two, it broadened the people's outlook. Before the emergence of Bhakti movement, people were superstitious, they had blind faith in useless rituals, ceremonies, but the Bhakti reformers condemned these evil practices and preached that God blessed only those who performed good deeds. So as a result, it broadened the people's outlook from being just mere superstitious to performing good deeds, and not to look upon these practices as a part of the religion. Then number three, it also uplifted the low classes. Now, most of the Bhakti reformers, they condemned the caste system and untouchability. In fact, the great reformers like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramanand, Kabir, Guru Nanak Dev Ji happily accepted the people of low classes as their followers. They exhorted their followers to dine together without any consideration of caste, individual status. Thus, it raised the status and prestige of the people of low caste. Now is the development of the composite culture. Now, this movement inculcated a spirit of religious toleration among the Hindus and the Muslims, and as a result of this, the artists of both the communities came closer to each other. As a result, Hindu-Muslim school of painting came into existence, right? I would say the Hindu-Muslim style of architecture that was visible, and this influence could be seen in the Muslim shrines, tombs, and the mosque. Now, the Mughal architecture is also a mixture of Hindu Muslim architecture. Dr. Tarachand he remarks, as a matter of fact, architectural school of the period, whether Hindu or Muslim, are really two branches of the same tree, both sprung from the same root. So this is the importance of that time of Punjab, that kind of Hindu Muslim culture which was in Punjab during the medieval period. Right. Now, enrichment of literature. See, if I told you that the Bhakti movement also increased the places of pilgrimage, because these places were associated with the birth of these reformers or the other events, the same goes for the literature and the language also. Now, these Bhakti reformers, they wrote in different languages like Sanskrit, Marathi, Bengali, Gujarati, Hindi. As a result, all these languages made tremendous progress. For instance, Geet Govinda by Jaydev, Sur Sagar by Surdas, Ramacharitra Manas by Tulsidas, Adi Granth largely by the Sikh gurus are the greatest legacies of the literature because of the contribution of the Bhakti reformers. Now, see, Bhakti movement was actually a religious movement. So we can talk about its socio-cultural aspect, its religious impact, but yes, this movement also had some political impacts. What were those impacts? We'll again change the color so that it's easy for you to differentiate. Just hold on, Machu. Right. See, one, it influenced the religious policy of Akbar and rise of Sikh and the Marathas as the political power. So, number one point, that it is because of the influence of the Bhakti movement reformers that Akbar, the Mughal emperor, adopted a policy of religious toleration. He abolished jizya. He established matrimonial relations with the Hindus. He appointed them to high jobs, gave them religious freedom. Dr. Ishwari Prasad, he says, it was the voice of Kabir and Nanak which spoke through the imperial lips and created a storm in the orthodox circles, because we will be talking about the Naqshbandi sect. That was also one of the silsilas or the orders of the Sufism, and they did talk about some orthodox features. But this is what they say, that it was the voice of Kabir and Nanak which spoke through these the lips of Akbar and created storm in the people who believed in the orthodox thinking. Now, other important aspect was the rise of Sikh and the Marathas as political forces. In Punjab, Bhakti movement was led by Guru Nanak Dev Ji and his successors. Gradually, this movement gave birth to Sikh religion. The Sikh rose as a political power after 1699 AD and gradually established their independent kingdom. Similarly, in Maharashtra, Bhakti movement created a spirit of unity among the Marathas and encouraged Shivaji to establish a Hindu kingdom. In 1674, Shivaji declared himself as the Chhatrapati and assumed the title of Chhatrapati and declared himself as an independent and sovereign ruler. So this is what I have for you in Bhakti movement. We've talked about the causes of the rise of Bhakti movement, about the features, and about the impact. I'm sure now the topic of Bhakti movement will be quite easy for you. Thank you so much for watching this video. My next video will be on Sufism.